Hello everyone. Today my presentation is about the art of post-production, all from your own home. So first I want to start with a video that I made to show you what I'll be talking about today.
Throwing grenade. Hold on. This isn't a grenade. Yeah, this is a ball. Guys, come on, what are we doing?
So you may be wondering, what is post-production? Post-production is defined as the period following filming or taping in which a motion picture or television show is ready for public presentation. It is also known as editing, and that's the period when special effects are added, such as lighting, explosions, music, and also when all the clips of the movie are edited together. Why do I enjoy editing? I really like visualizing and seeing how the movie will come together in the end. I first started making short effects films in 2013 when I found a couple cool effects apps from a device. Then I started video editing the next year, mostly for my YouTube channels, and realized that the two together were really fun. I have now moved on to more advanced tools and can now fully control my effects rather than having them preset, though a preset beginning definitely helps. How should you start? The most important thing is software, because the wrong one can really limit your editing. I suggest starting with the free software, then moving up to more advanced tools. Keep in mind when you start making short effects films on the computer, you will need a compositor for effects, not an editor. What's the difference? An editor usually has trimming and splicing tools. You can usually zoom in your video, add text, and more. A compositor has the above tools, but also 3D effects capabilities, frame-by-frame editing, and advanced and fully customizable effects. While at this moment it may sound like all you need is a compositor, we'll go into the drawbacks of having only one of each. First, let's go into what if you only have an editor. Well, it's hard to do frame-by-frame editing, and there's probably no 3D effects. A good alternative to this issue is stock footage. You can easily key out the black background of the footage. It looks really good and blends easily. It's also real footage from real explosions, gunfire, and more. It's usually very pricey, but you can find lots of free ones online, though they definitely won't be as good quality. So, stock footage is definitely the best way to get real-life elements, but the price tag is definitely a big issue. I would much rather spend money on a compositor than every single stock footage element. If need be, you can always create an explosion using a particle simulator. Here are some important things to know for stock footage. You will need to practice blending stock footage before you can get a good result. Also, stock footage is not 3D. You need different types of explosions for different angles in your video. I see so many mistakes with stock footage these days. I see a slanted table, they put a flat explosion on it, and then sometimes they put a straight-on explosion for an aerial view. It looks really awful and detracts from your video. So make sure to play it back before you're done to make sure it looks good. Here's from the original video, which I'm sure shocked you all. This is the explosion that I keyed out using my editor. It's actually much easier for me to key out using my editor rather than a compositor, but it doesn't give a good result. Because my video is slightly angled, I had to make sure that the explosion started slightly below the footage. What if you only have a compositor though? I highly recommend getting an editor if you only have a compositor if you're going to make more than short films for just 5 minutes or more. Some compositors go only frame by frame, and it's very difficult to edit full movies with them. A frame is actually 30 frames in 1 second. Can you imagine editing a full movie with that? Some cameras go up to 40 or even 60 frames per second if you're recording in 4K. Editors usually specialize in long clips rather than select moments like compositors do. They also usually have an easier user interface, and sometimes compositors have a built-in editor like mine. Though they may have a built-in editor and it may sound like you don't need to get another one, they usually aren't that good because compositing is the main focus. Here are some important things to know for custom effects. When you first start doing effects, start with a mobile app. Most, if not all, the effects will be preset, but it's a really good starting point. Start using a compositor and editor when you're ready to fully control all your 2D and 3D effects. Here's a video I made totally using custom effects in my compositor. Some Doctor Who fans might have noticed, this is a Doctor Who regeneration effect. The first step in this was motion tracking my hand for a point for all the effects in this clip. Here I had an orange plane for a glow effect. I decreased the opacity and paired it to the motion tracker. So in a moment you'll see it's moving nicely across the screen with the motion tracker, but I only want it in a select area. So I'm going to make a mask around the glow. Now that I've fixed that up, it looks really good. Now I'm going to keyframe the opacity for the glow to increase over time, spike in the middle, and fade out completely at the end. Now I've added a light raise effect, which I will also pair to the motion tracker. I shortened the raise and changed the color as well. Now it's looking pretty good, but we need to, again, fade it in, spike in the middle, and fade it out at the very end. Now that it's completely faded out, let's play it back and see how it looks. It's looking pretty good so far, so now let's move on to the actual explosive effect. Here's the regeneration. Now I've added the effect to make a mask to only keep a portion of it. The mask has to be huge because I don't want any of the effect bleeding through. This is the only preset effect I use in the entire clip. Now that's done, I add the sound effects and everything else. The actual time for this was 23 minutes and 14 seconds, not including adding sound effects or the filming time. Here's an alternate version that I made. For here, I removed the sound. I also motion tracked the hand much further and created a custom light raise effect for the very end. I personally prefer this effect much more. So here's some important things to know if you're making 3D effects. The 3D animator application is not used for blending your animated 3D object with your video. You'll probably need another application for that, which will not be free. The animation and 3D models are imported separately as different files, then you may blend them together using your compositor. Here's a 3D effect I made. Don't blink or you will miss it. Now I'll walk you through how I made this tiny clip. The first step was adding the 3D models, then repositioning and rescaling them. They're actually the exact same 3D model, though one is behind and one moves significantly faster. Now that I've done that, I can go ahead and plot the points for movement. This took more than half the time because I needed the movement to look natural, and I also need the small ship to move significantly faster. Now that I've got the tweaking done, I can go ahead and work out the scaling and make sure the small ship moves faster. Now I've got that done, I can add the laser shots, sparks, and the sound effects. This one I had to motion track because it didn't move correctly. Now I added the sparks to the small ship and the sound effects as well. Here's the fire back from the small ship. I had to make sure this went underneath both layers of ship, and I had to add the sound effects and sparks as well. This tiny clip actually took 34 minutes to make, mostly because it was really complex and the movements, again, had to look really good. Here's my final video combining all the topics that I've gone over. I have 3D effects for the blaster shot and falling rocks, and I also have a stock PNG for the very end where I shoot the camera. Now, follow these instructions, and you're on track to be the greatest Imperial Stormtrooper ever. We can fix that right. I'm not paying for it. Thanks for watching.